My beloved child, listen closely, with every fiber of your being. For what I am about to reveal has been carefully guarded in the depths of my heart until this precise moment in time. The silence you have experienced, the waiting that has stretched your faith, the seasons where my voice seemed distant, none of this was abandonment. Every moment when I appeared absent was actually a time of divine protection, strategic positioning, and careful preparation for what I am now ready to unveil. In that is where I am deepest happy. You have questioned the delays, with tears streaming down your face. You have wondered about the closed doors that seemed to mock your prayers. You have asked why people walked away without explanation, leaving you standing in empty rooms with nothing but echoing questions. But understand this fundamental truth that will reshape your entire perspective. I was orchestrating every single detail with surgical precision, removing what couldn't sustain your future and preparing sacred space for what truly belongs in the tapestry of your life. The weight of confusion you've carried, the sleepless nights wondering if you somehow missed my voice, the moments when you felt like you were walking in spiritual fog. All of this was part of a divine process that required your trust more than your understanding. I wasn't testing your faith to see if it would break. I was strengthening it so it would become unbreakable. The very foundations of who you are had to be established in the quiet place where only you and I existed, away from the noise of opinions and the pressure of expectations. There were seasons when you begged me to just say something, anything, to break the suffocating silence. But I knew that premature words would have satisfied your immediate longing while sabotaging your long-term preparation. Some truths are too sacred to speak before the heart is ready to receive them without distortion. I was waiting for you to reach a place where your desperation for answers transformed into deep communion with my presence. Your hidden faithfulness was never invisible to heaven. During those long, quiet seasons when you felt completely invisible to the world around you, I was meticulously watching every single act of faithfulness, no matter how small or seemingly insignificant. The late-night prayers when no one knew the depth of your struggles, the moments you chose integrity over convenience when no earthly eyes were watching, the countless times you forgave those who wounded you when it would have been easier to harbor resentment. None of it, absolutely none of it, went unnoticed by heaven. Your unseen obedience carried infinitely more weight in the spiritual realm than any public declaration or performed righteousness ever could. While others received immediate applause and recognition in the bright lights of public platforms, your faithful steps taken in the shadows were considered sacred currency in heaven's economy. Every sacrifice you made without fanfare, every tear you shed in private, every choice to trust me when circumstances screamed that you should doubt, all of it has been recorded in the eternal archives of heaven with golden ink. I watched with tender attention as you opened doors for others while your own remained firmly shut. I saw you speak blessings over those who had hurt you, releasing grace when you yourself were bleeding internally from their words and actions. I witnessed your acts of kindness toward those who never acknowledged your pain, your service to those who took your efforts for granted, your love extended to those who'd never returned it in equal measure. When you chose to pick up your Bible instead of your phone during those desperate hours when comfort seemed impossible to find, I took note. When you bit your tongue instead of responding with the anger that would have felt so justified, I recorded that victory. When you declared my goodness even while life felt brutal and unfair, when you worshiped me through tears of confusion, when you continued to believe in my love despite the silence, every single one of these moments was witnessed, treasured, and filed away as evidence of your genuine heart. The doors you opened for others when yours remained locked, the prayers you whispered for people who had betrayed you, the blessings you spoke over those who had wounded you. All of this was being collected like precious pearls, remembered not just as good deeds, but as character-revealing moments that proved your heart's true condition. You had no idea how much beauty I saw in your small, unwitnessed choices that no one thanked you for, no one celebrated, no one even knew about. These hidden acts of faithfulness were never performed for an audience, which is precisely what made them so powerful and authentic. They weren't tainted by the need for recognition or corrupted by the desire for applause. They flowed from a pure heart that chose to love, serve, and trust, even when it cost you everything and returned nothing visible in the natural realm. The strategic purpose behind divine silence. My quietness in your life wasn't rejection. It was the most strategic positioning I could orchestrate for your spiritual development. In the profound silence where my audible voice seemed absent, you grew in supernatural discernment that no amount of constant speaking could have produced. Without the crutch of continuous reassurance and obvious signs, you learned to sense my presence beyond the realm of emotions and feelings. You became someone who chose me not just when you could feel my comfort surrounding you like a warm blanket, but even when you couldn't sense me at all, when faith felt like groping in the dark with trembling hands. This kind of trust, built in the furnace of uncertainty, created a foundation that cannot be shaken by changing circumstances, shifting emotions, or the opinions of others. I strategically allowed the silence so your spiritual roots would grow deeper into the bedrock of my character, rather than remaining shallow and dependent on constant external confirmation. The questions you carried, the mysteries you couldn't solve, the puzzles that kept you awake at night, these were developing a type of wisdom in you that easy answers never could have produced. There's a unique strength that can only be forged in the fire of waiting, a particular kind of spiritual muscle that can only be developed in the gymnasium of uncertainty. But now, my beloved, the appointed hour has arrived, where this strategic silence must transform into crystal clear direction. The season of building your faith in the dark is graduating into a season of walking in supernatural clarity. I'm ready to speak boldly and definitively, giving precise language to the longings that have been wordless in your heart and bringing razor-sharp clarity to the confusion that has clouded your mind. The enemy of your soul tried desperately to use my quietness as evidence of abandonment, whispering lies that I had grown tired of you, that I had moved on to someone more worthy, that your prayers had somehow stopped reaching heaven. But I want you to know with absolute certainty that I never left your side, not for a single second, not for even a heartbeat. I was walking you through territory where only genuine faith can survive, where trust must be pure and undiluted by the need for constant proof. Every moment you thought you were alone, I was closer to you than your own breath. When you whispered my name in the darkness, I was leaning in to catch every word. When you questioned whether I was real, whether I cared, whether I remembered your name, I was surrounding you with invisible armies of angels, holding you up when your own strength failed, carrying you when you couldn't take another step forward. Your prayers have created a divine pathway to heaven. Every whispered petition that escaped your lips when your heart was breaking into 1,000 pieces has not only reached my throne room, it has created a pathway, a supernatural highway between your pain and my heart. Each tear-stained prayer, each desperate cry for help, each confused question asked in the middle of sleepless nights has been received, processed, and is now ready to receive precise, targeted responses. The time has come for answers that aren't vague or open to multiple interpretations. No more scattered impressions that leave you more confused than before. No more signs that could mean anything or nothing. I am bringing you clear, undeniable truths that are specifically tailored for your exact situation, your current season, your immediate needs. You've asked me why certain devastating things happened when you were serving me faithfully. You've wondered what you should do next when every path seems blocked or dangerous. You've questioned where I've been during the darkest chapters of your story. Now I will not only answer these burning questions, but I will satisfy the deep unrest that has been dwelling like a heavy stone in the pit of your stomach, the anxiety that wakes you up at 3 a.m. with racing thoughts. I will pull back the curtain and reveal the hidden motivations of people around you, those who smiled while planning your downfall, those who spoke encouragement while secretly hoping for your failure, those who appeared to be friends while working behind the scenes to undermine your progress. I will expose why certain opportunities that seemed heaven-sent never actually reach your hands, why doors that appeared to be opening for you suddenly slam shut just as you were about to walk through them. I will explain with perfect clarity why promising doors crumbled into dust the moment you touched them, why relationships that seemed blessed by heaven dissolved without warning or explanation. You weren't being punished for some hidden sin or forgotten transgression. You weren't being overlooked because someone else was more qualified or deserving. You were being meticulously protected from danger that had disguised itself as success, from traps that had been wrapped in the packaging of answered prayer. The very things you cried over losing were actually threats to your destiny that I removed before they could take root and choke out the purposes I had planted in your life. What looked like closed doors were actually divine interventions, protective barriers I placed between you and destruction that wore the mask of opportunity. Understanding the divine wisdom of delays. What felt like everything in your life shutting down completely, like progress grinding to a halt, like dreams dying before your eyes. This was never the conclusion of your story. It was a deliberate, calculated pause, orchestrated by my loving hand. I permitted the stillness not to hurt you or frustrate your legitimate desires, but to shield you from moving too quickly into spaces that hadn't been properly prepared to hold the weight of what I intended to place in your life. There are seasons in every believer's journey when forward motion would cause unnecessary damage, when progress would actually be regress in disguise, when advancement would lead to spiritual catastrophe. During these critical junctures, I step in with divine authority and whisper to time itself, "Wait, not yet. Let me prepare the way." I paused your carefully laid plans because the foundation beneath them had invisible cracks that would have caused total collapse later. If I had allowed you to continue building your dreams on that unstable ground, everything you worked for would have eventually crumbled, and the devastation would have been far worse than the temporary disappointment of delay. Like a master builder who stops construction when he discovers structural problems, I halted the progress in your life so I could rework the blueprints, refine the materials, and reinforce the areas that needed strength you couldn't see was missing. I wasn't destroying your dreams. I was ensuring they would be built to last, not just for a season, but for generations. The people who disappeared from your life without warning or explanation weren't random departures that happened due to miscommunication or hurt feelings. I strategically removed them because they weren't assigned to walk with you into your next level of elevation. Their purpose in your story had reached its conclusion, and keeping them around would have delayed the very breakthrough you were praying for. I paused everything long enough for wrong attachments to naturally break away, for loud opinions that were drowning out my voice to fade into insignificance, for the noise of human advice and worldly wisdom to quiet down so that my voice could become the only one you truly craved to hear above all others. What appeared to be complete stillness was actually intense sacred activity happening in the spiritual realm. Strategic, purposeful movement that required your patient trust more than your understanding. You kept searching for visible signs of momentum, looking for evidence that things were moving in your favor, but I was working behind the scenes, securing your foundation, establishing your roots, preparing the soil of your future. Now, as this divinely orchestrated pause finally lifts, you won't be returning to the same old patterns, the same limited thinking, the same small dreams that once satisfied you. You'll be advancing into something immeasurably greater, something that will stretch your faith, expand your vision, and require every lesson you learn during the waiting season. The sacred purpose embedded within your pain. Your suffering wasn't meaningless random events that happened because life is unfair or because I wasn't paying attention to your needs. Every moment of pain held layers and depths that were completely invisible on the surface level. While you were crying out for deliverance from the circumstances that were crushing your spirit, I was carefully embedding divine messages within those very moments of anguish. Messages specifically designed to awaken supernatural wisdom that would be activated later at precisely the right time. Your trials weren't just difficulties to be endured. They were encrypted with insight, heavenly instructions, and revelations that could only be unlocked through the pressure you experienced. The pain served as a combination lock, and each tear, each sleepless night, each moment of feeling abandoned was actually a number in the sequence that would eventually open treasures you never knew existed. I deliberately hid spiritual treasures within your struggle, not to torture you or test your endurance for entertainment, but to ensure that when you finally emerged from the wilderness season, you would carry authority that wasn't based on theoretical knowledge, but on real lived experience. You would speak with the weight of someone who had actually walked through the fire and survived, with your faith intact. The sleepless nights when anxiety kept your mind racing with worried thoughts. The seasons of aching silence when it felt like even I had abandoned you. The days when your strength seemed to evaporate without explanation. All of these experiences carried secrets, hidden lessons, and divine downloads that you would one day need to unlock freedom for other people who are trapped in similar circumstances. Your personal story of pain and ultimate triumph is destined to become a detailed map that guides someone else's escape from their own prison of despair. The fire you walk through wasn't meant to destroy you, but to reveal gold, precious character qualities, supernatural strength, and spiritual gifts that you didn't even know you possessed until the pressure brought them to the surface. Some of the most important truths you now understand about life, about faith, about my character, about your own identity, could never have been learned through ease and comfort. I used affliction as your teacher, and brokenness as the doorway into deeper revelation. The very circumstances that you thought would be your downfall became the launching pad for your spiritual breakthrough. You asked me to make you stronger, and I answered that prayer by allowing the exact environment that could grow spiritual muscle that peace and prosperity never could have developed. I placed divine patterns, heavenly blueprints, and supernatural strategies inside the pain itself, and now I'm unfolding them before your spiritual eyes so you can see how every piece fits together in the grand design. Your tears became sacred currency in heaven's economy. Every single tear that rolled down your face during the darkest chapters of your story was captured by angels, not symbolically or metaphorically, but literally collected and preserved in golden vessels in heaven's treasury. I didn't allow a single drop to fall to the ground and evaporate into nothingness. Each tear was treated as sacred currency, evidence of genuine faith under pressure, liquid prayers that spoke louder than words ever could. While others dismissed your pain as weakness or told you to just get over it and move on, I treated every tear as holy water that carried the DNA of surrender, trust, and hope that refused to die, even in the face of overwhelming circumstances. Your tears weren't just salt water produced by emotional stress. They were prophetic declarations born from unseen spiritual battles, liquid testimonies of a heart that refused to give up on my goodness. You didn't cry only from despair and hopelessness, though those emotions were certainly part of your experience. You cried because your spirit, created in my image, instinctively knew there had to be more than what you were currently experiencing. You cried because your soul refused to settle for less than the abundant life I had promised. You cried because somewhere deep inside, your faith was still alive and kicking against the circumstances that tried to suffocate it. Because you didn't walk away when the tears came. Because you didn't allow bitterness to poison your heart when the pain seemed unbearable. Because you kept choosing to trust me even when I seemed silent and distant. Those tears became a voice in the spirit realm that reached into the very throne room of heaven, demanding divine intervention, supernatural turnaround, miraculous breakthrough. Your tears have been speaking to me with an eloquence that surpasses the most beautifully crafted prayers. They've been interceding for justice when you couldn't find words, crying out for healing when you didn't know how to ask for it, pleading for breakthrough when you couldn't see any possible way forward. And I have heard every liquid word, understood every unspoken plea, felt every drop of pain that fell from your eyes. Now I am releasing answers in the form of tangible, visible shifts in your circumstances. Where you once wept from devastating loss, you will soon dance with joy over supernatural restoration. Where sorrow once sat in heavy silence, celebration will rise up in songs of victory that will echo through the generations of your family line. I allowed sacred space for you to cry, not just to comfort your broken heart, but to transform the very ground of your life through the salt of surrender. In the secret places where you poured out your pain before me, your tears watered the soil of future joy, softening the hardened ground of disappointment and creating fertile conditions for miracles to take root and flourish. Your tears weren't wasted moisture that accomplished nothing. They were investments in a supernatural portfolio that is now ready to pay dividends you never imagined were possible. The return on your emotional surrender is arriving not gradually over years, but suddenly, forcefully, undeniably, in ways that will leave no room for doubt about the source of your blessing. Divine clarity piercing through confusion. The fog of confusion that has clouded your vision and made every decision feel impossible is finally lifting. The indecision that has made your steps hesitant and uncertain is being shattered by the force of supernatural clarity that I'm pouring into your spirit like liquid light. No more endless pacing over the same ground, hoping for a sign that never seems to come. No more sleepless nights, wrestling with choices that all seem equally risky or unclear. I am stepping into your situation with direction so precise, so specific, so perfectly tailored to your exact needs, that it will pierce through every lie the enemy has whispered and dismantle every lingering doubt that has made you question whether you can trust your own spiritual discernment. I'm giving you supernatural insight that cuts through what merely looks good on the surface and reveals with laser precision what is truly sent by my hand versus what is a counterfeit designed to distract you. You won't need to overanalyze every opportunity or become paralyzed by too many options anymore. The gift of divine discernment I'm releasing into your life will make the right choices as obvious as the difference between light and darkness. You'll simply know. Feel it in your spirit with the kind of certainty that cannot be shaken by other people's opinions or contradictory circumstances. I've witnessed how uncertainty has drained your emotional and spiritual energy, leaving you exhausted from the constant mental gymnastics of trying to figure out what I want you to do. I've watched you hesitate when I was actually nudging you forward, not because you were rebellious or disobedient, but because you sincerely didn't want to make a mistake that would disappoint me or derail my plans for your life. I honor your desire to walk in perfect alignment with my will. I recognize the weight of responsibility you feel when decisions seem critical to your future. but you need to understand that you are not alone in the choosing process. I have already gone ahead of you into your future, prepared outcomes that align with my perfect design for your life. And now, I'm making those predetermined pathways visible to your spiritual eyes. What once felt like navigating through a confusing maze with no clear exit is becoming a clearly marked road with obvious directional signs. What once seemed like blurry impressions that could be interpreted a dozen different ways will now come with unmistakable confirmation that removes all doubt about what you're supposed to do next. This is a fundamental shift in your spiritual atmosphere, a divine reset that brings the kind of holy stillness that allows my voice to rise above all the competing noise that has been drowning out my whisper. You've been asking me to show you what to do, and I am answering not just with information, but with direction that carries supernatural peace as its authenticating signature. Freedom from the prison of false identity. You learn to become a master of camouflage for the sake of survival, carefully adjusting your voice to match what others expected to hear, strategically masking your true emotions to avoid rejection, deliberately dimming the bright light of your authentic self to fit into rooms that couldn't handle your God-given brilliance. You developed the skill of shaping yourself like clay to meet expectations that were never meant to define you, becoming expertly trained at performing strength while internally silencing the beautiful vulnerability that made you uniquely you. For too long, you've worn masks that were crafted not for deception, but for protection, hoping that if you could just become what others needed you to be, you would finally find the acceptance and love your heart desperately craved. But I couldn't allow you to remain hidden behind these elaborate disguises that were slowly suffocating the real person I created you to be. That's why I allowed divine discomfort to systematically strip away every false covering, not to embarrass you or expose your weaknesses to the world, but to lovingly guide you back to the original blueprint I designed before time began. There exists a version of you that I crafted in heaven before you ever took your first breath on earth, completely free from the prison of performance, boldly authentic in every truth you speak, radiantly beautiful in the love you carry, and unshakably anchored in your identity as my beloved child. The painful process of shedding these false identities felt like humiliation at the time, but it was actually the deepest form of healing your soul could receive. I didn't allow you to remain in environments where you were merely tolerated. I strategically led you into situations where transparency wasn't just encouraged, but required for survival. What I'm preparing to entrust to your hands in this next season cannot be carried by someone who is still pretending to be someone they're not. The assignment I'm releasing requires absolute authenticity, complete wholeness, and the kind of person who isn't afraid to walk into any room fully themselves, even when that version doesn't fit the mold that others expect or prefer. You are not broken goods that need to be fixed or polished up before you can be used. You are not a rough draft that needs extensive editing before you're ready for publication. You are a masterpiece that got covered up by the dust of other people's expectations, and all I'm doing is carefully wiping away what was never meant to be part of your true design. The freedom to be authentically yourself will feel unfamiliar at first because you've spent so many years performing roles that weren't written for you. But this freedom isn't permission to be wild or irresponsible. It's an invitation to be whole, to integrate all the parts of yourself that you scattered in different relationships to please different people. Your misunderstood season served a divine purpose. You spent countless nights lying awake, wondering why they couldn't see your heart clearly, why your pure intentions were consistently misread and twisted into something ugly, why your thoughtful silence was mistaken for prideful arrogance, and why your faithful loyalty was dismissed as naive weakness. The more you tried to explain yourself, the more tangled the web of misunderstanding became, until you began to wonder if there was something fundamentally wrong with the way you communicated or related to others. But beloved child, I want you to understand a profound spiritual truth. There was absolutely nothing wrong with your spirit, your heart, or your intentions. I was the one strategically cloaking you in a divine invisibility that protected what I was growing in the secret place of your soul. I was the one allowing confusion to swirl around your true identity in order to preserve the consecration process that was happening beneath the surface. If I had allowed them to fully understand and appreciate you during that season, they would have clung to you for what you carried spiritually, but they wouldn't have honored the deep work I was doing to refine your character. They would have wanted the gift without respecting the giver. They would have celebrated your anointing while ignoring the cost of carrying it. So I made your spiritual language foreign to those who weren't assigned to journey with you into your destiny. This wasn't about popularity contests or social acceptance. It was about preserving the purity of what I was birthing in you. I wasn't punishing you by keeping you hidden from their understanding. I was preparing you through divine separation from influences that would have contaminated the process. You were difficult for them to understand because you were different, not weird or broken, but carrying something rare and precious that required special handling. I wasn't going to allow anyone to define, limit, or box you in before you had fully discovered your true identity in me and learned to walk in the full authority of who I created you to be. That's why you never quite fit in with the crowds you once desperately craved to join. That's why you felt like an outsider even in rooms full of people who seemed to connect effortlessly with each other. That uncomfortable feeling of disconnection wasn't rejection. It was divine redirection, away from relationships that would have stunted your spiritual growth and toward the connections that would nurture your authentic development. The loneliness you experienced wasn't punishment for being different. It was preparation for walking in a level of spiritual authority that requires absolute confidence in your identity apart from human approval. I had to wean you completely off the addictive need to be understood and accepted by everyone so that when I do reveal you publicly, you won't bow down to the opinions of those watching or compromise your message to maintain their applause. The breaking of spiritual restraints and divine acceleration. For far too long, certain breakthrough blessings have been held up in the spiritual realm. Not denied, canceled, or forgotten, but carefully restrained by my own hand until the moment was perfectly right for release. The spiritual blocks you've encountered weren't punishment for hidden sins or evidence that you'd somehow disqualified yourself from my favor. They were divine timing mechanisms ensuring that blessings would arrive when you were mature enough to steward them well. I strategically kept certain doors locked and certain opportunities suspended because the foundation of your character wasn't yet ready to hold the weight of what I had planned to place in your life. Premature blessing can become a curse if the recipient hasn't developed the wisdom, humility, and spiritual strength necessary to handle increased responsibility, influence, or resources. But now, my beloved, I speak with holy urgency resonating in my voice. The season of divine restraint is rapidly coming to an end. The hold that has kept your breakthrough in waiting is beginning to crack and break apart. The barriers that have blocked your progress are starting to lift like a heavy fog dissipating in the morning sun. What I've been storing up in heaven's warehouses specifically for you is now being released into forward motion. You've successfully completed the proving season, walking faithfully through those long, dry stretches where no visible progress could be detected. Yet you kept believing in my promises when everything around you suggested that you should give up hope. You've endured the whispered doubts that tried to convince you that you had misheard my voice, the temptation to quit when the waiting became almost unbearable, the spiritual weariness that comes from hoping deferred. But during that silence, something incredibly powerful was being constructed in the spiritual realm. Piece by piece, brick by brick, according to divine blueprints that will astound you when you see the finished product. When this supernatural release begins to manifest in your natural circumstances, it won't come slowly or in small increments that leave you wondering if it's really happening. It will come fast and full, like a dam that has been holding back a massive reservoir suddenly bursting open and releasing torrents of blessing that have been building pressure for years. I'm not just opening a small faucet to let a few drops trickle into your life. I'm removing the floodgates entirely, so that wave after wave of breakthrough can crash into every area that has been parched by delay. This acceleration will feel sudden to those watching from the outside, but you'll understand that it's actually the harvest from seeds of obedience you planted during seasons when no one was paying attention to your faithfulness. Don't be surprised when areas of your life that once felt like barren wilderness begin flowering overnight, as if someone had worked a miracle in your garden while you slept. Don't be shocked when opportunities that once ignored you now actively seek you out, when conversations that once excluded you now center around your name and expertise, when doors that once remained firmly shut now swing wide open before you even have a chance to knock. Your obedience created unstoppable spiritual momentum. Every single time you said yes to my leading, even when you were confused about the destination, every moment when you acted in faith before clarity arrived, every step you took in obedience without needing a detailed explanation, these choices created powerful ripple effects in the spiritual realm that are still expanding outward, touching lives and situations in ways you never could have imagined or orchestrated through human effort. You stirred heaven into action with your trust-filled responses to my promptings. Things that had been immovable for generations began shifting permanently, not temporarily or conditionally, but with eternal implications that will affect not just your life, but the lives of your children and their children after them. You didn't need perfect visibility or complete understanding, because your spirit had learned to recognize the sound of my voice above all the competing noise. That level of spiritual sensitivity and trust built supernatural highways in the spirit realm, cleared divine pathways for generational breakthrough, and initiated irreversible momentum that no human force or demonic strategy can stop or reverse. The moment you stepped out in faith, choosing to trust my heart even when you couldn't see my hand, entire spiritual systems began realigning themselves in your favor. Battles that you weren't even aware were being fought on your behalf suddenly started tipping toward victory. Doors that had been sealed by enemy interference began unlocking, not just for you personally, but for everyone connected to your assignment and calling. Your willingness to obey without needing detailed explanations sent signals throughout the heavenly realm that activated legions of angels who had been waiting for permission to move on your behalf. They responded to your obedience that didn't demand reasons, your trust that didn't require proof, your faith that didn't insist on understanding every detail before taking the next step. You had no way of knowing that your simple acts of surrender were creating spiritual momentum that would eventually become unstoppable force. You weren't just surviving personal tests or enduring temporary discomfort. You were rewriting spiritual legacies that had been marked by defeat and limitation for generations before you. You were planting seeds of breakthrough that will grow into mighty trees, providing shade and shelter for people you'll never meet in this lifetime. The waves of blessing and breakthrough that your faithful obedience set in motion are now returning to you, amplified, multiplied, and charged with supernatural acceleration. This isn't just a personal shift or individual blessing. It's a transformation that carries the power to change entire family lines, communities, and even nations as the ripple effects continue to spread. Stepping into your preserved and protected destiny. What you're about to walk into isn't a fresh start. a do-overs or a consolation prize given because your original dreams didn't work out according to plan. What's opening before you is the exact destination I have been carefully guarding and protecting until your spirit was mature enough to receive it without being destroyed by the weight of its significance and responsibility. The thought you were being forced to begin again from scratch, starting over after failure, rebuilding from the rubble of disappointment. But in spiritual reality, you are stepping into something that never actually left your future. It was simply placed under divine lock and key, sealed away in heaven's vault, until you are ready to carry it with the honor, wisdom, and humility it deserves. I haven't erased or discarded the years that seemed lost, wasted, or unproductive. Instead, I have been strategically using every detour, delay, setback, and pause to shape your hands for what I'm now preparing to place in them. You didn't lose time wandering in circles. You were being divinely aligned with perfect timing that human planning never could have achieved. This isn't a consolation prize or second best option. This is the original vision I had for your life before time began. The primary purpose I designed you to fulfill. The central assignment that all your previous experiences have been preparing you to embrace. Every difficult chapter, every painful season, every confusing transition was actually a crucial part of the preparation process. What I've kept in reserve for you throughout all these years of waiting is immeasurably better than anything you would have settled for during seasons when you didn't fully understand your own value or the magnitude of what I had promised. You were willing to accept far less than my best because you didn't comprehend the weight of the calling I had placed on your life. That's precisely why I had to strategically pull you away from opportunities that looked appealing but would have become golden cages, not to leave you empty and disappointed, but to preserve unlimited space for the fullness I had always intended to pour into your life at exactly the right moment. The relationships, provision, clarity, and opportunities that are now beginning to manifest won't feel like you're forcing puzzle pieces that don't quite fit. Instead, everything will click into place with supernatural ease because you're finally walking in what was custom designed for your specific gifting, personality, calling, and life purpose. You'll recognize the divine fit immediately. You'll sense the perfect alignment between who you are and what you're being called to do. You'll experience deep peace where anxiety used to dominate your thoughts, supernatural confidence where insecurity once paralyzed your decision-making, and joyful anticipation where dread and worry used to steal your sleep. The divine vindication that silences all doubt. Throughout your journey, you have felt invisible in rooms where you poured out your heart and gave your very best effort. You have walked through seemingly endless seasons where the silence was deafening, louder, and more oppressive than any criticism could have been. In those moments when you questioned whether anyone even noticed your existence, let alone valued your contribution, a painful question grew like a tumor in your soul. Does anyone see me? Does my life matter? Have I been forgotten? But I am speaking to you now with a voice that has the authority to silence every doubt and expose every lie that has whispered in your ear during the dark nights of your soul. You have never, not even for a single heartbeat, been forgotten by heaven. While human eyes overlooked your efforts and earthly voices failed to acknowledge your worth, I have been watching every detail of your life unfold with the tender attention of a loving father who treasures his most precious child. While they bypassed you for promotions, opportunities, and recognition that you deserved, I was building something eternal and unshakable within the depths of your spirit. Something far more valuable than temporary human applause or fleeting worldly success. While they failed to see your potential and dismissed your contributions as insignificant, I was weaving golden threads of purpose into the very fabric of your being. You are not lost in an anonymous crowd of billions struggling to make your voice heard above the noise. You are not just one among many, hoping to catch a lucky break that might change your circumstances. You have been marked intentionally and unmistakably by the specific plans of heaven, chosen for assignments that were written with your name attached before the foundations of the world were established. The intensity of spiritual warfare you've experienced, the pressure you felt that seemed disproportionate to your circumstances, the battles you fought in the secret place of your heart, all of this has been evidence that you've been targeted not by random misfortune or bad luck, but by heaven itself, for assignments so specific and weighty that even demonic forces could sense the preparation happening long before you understood what was being built in your life. That's why you've faced battles that others in your circle haven't had to endure. That's why your path has felt narrow, lonely, and frequently misunderstood by those who were watching from the outside. That's why you've been pressed beyond what seemed reasonable or fair, stretched beyond your perceived capacity, and tested in ways that left you wondering if you would survive with your faith intact. I have placed within you something that cannot be duplicated, replicated, or mass-produced, something tailor-made for this exact moment in history, this precise season in the Earth's timeline. You weren't randomly born into this generation by cosmic accident. You were launched with divine intentionality into a timeline that desperately needs your unique voice, your specific heart, your particular brand of obedience that carries my DNA. You carry within your spirit something sacred and powerful, something that has the capacity to shift spiritual atmospheres when you walk into a room, change destructive narratives when you speak truth, unlock chains of bondage when you pray with authority, and birth movements when you step into your calling with boldness. The pressure you've experienced hasn't been punishment for hidden failures. It's been the announcement that all of heaven has been watching the unfolding of your life with anticipation. This divine observation isn't voyeuristic entertainment for celestial beings. It's been a countdown to the moment when I would pull you from the shadows of preparation and begin to accelerate your steps into the fullness of what I designed from the beginning. You're not waiting for significance to arrive from outside sources. You're carrying it within you like a woman pregnant with destiny, ready to give birth to purposes that will outlive your natural lifespan. The supernatural transformation of your identity crisis. For too many seasons you have wrestled with the fundamental question of who you really are. Beneath all the roles you play, all the expectations you carry, and all the masks you've learned to wear for different audiences. The world has spoken over you through broken mirrors, reflecting distorted images that never captured your true essence. Words were carelessly thrown at you by people who didn't understand the masterpiece they were looking at. And over time, those foreign labels began sticking to your soul like spiritual graffiti on a priceless work of art. You were taught to measure your worth through performance metrics that were never designed by heaven, through how perfectly you could execute tasks, how flawlessly you could meet impossible standards, how beautifully you could present yourself to gain approval from finite humans who were themselves desperately searching for identity and meaning. The world's broken value system tried to convince you that you had to earn your place at the table, prove your right to exist, achieve your way into acceptance. Every time you failed to meet these impossible standards that were never meant to define you, shame crept into your heart like a slow poison, whispering lies that you were falling short of some divine expectation, that something was fundamentally wrong with your design, that you were insufficient for the purposes you sensed calling your name in quiet moments. But I am speaking now with the authority of your Creator to expose every single one of those falsehoods and bring you back to the truth I breathed into your being before time began its relentless march. You are not who they said you were in their moments of blindness and brokenness. You are not defined by the failure that felt so devastating at the time, but was actually redirection in disguise. You are not limited by the comparisons that made you feel inferior to others, who seemed to have it all together. You are not your mistakes. though you have learned valuable lessons from them. You are not your trauma, though it has developed resilience and compassion in you that couldn't have been cultivated any other way. You are not defined by the silence of others when you needed to be seen, heard, valued, and affirmed during your most vulnerable moments. The world took the beautiful name I gave you before you drew your first breath and tried to replace it with labels that would keep you trapped in cycles of striving and survival, never quite reaching the place of rest and acceptance your soul craved. But I gave you a name that was written in heaven's registry long before anyone else had a voice to speak over your life. I called you chosen, not because you earned it through good behavior, but because love chooses what love wants to cherish. I called you holy, not because you achieved moral perfection, but because I set you apart for sacred purposes that require consecration, not perfection. I called you mine, not because you proved yourself worthy of belonging, but because belonging was your birthright as my beloved child. Now I am systematically removing every counterfeit identity that the world stitched into your soul during seasons when you were too young, too hurt, or too desperate for acceptance to recognize the difference between truth and deception. I am carefully peeling away the masks you had to wear to survive in environments that couldn't celebrate your authentic self. I'm dismantling the false narratives that kept you hiding the brightest parts of your personality, fearing you'd be too much for some people or not enough for others. Your supernatural assignment and its eternal impact. There comes a moment in every believer's journey when what has been hidden in the secret place of communion must surface into public manifestation. Not for personal recognition or ego gratification, but because the timing of heaven demands the release of what has been brewing in the spiritual realm. That pivotal moment has arrived in your life, like a divine alarm clock that cannot be ignored or postponed. What I have deposited within the depths of your spirit cannot remain dormant or theoretical any longer. You have been carrying divine potential that was never meant to stay locked away in the private chambers of your heart, discussed only in prayer closets and whispered about in quiet moments of wonder. The purposes I placed in you have been maturing through every trial you've endured, every battle you fought, every act of obedience you didn't fully understand at the time. This calling pressing against your consciousness isn't optional, casual, or something you can postpone until you feel completely ready, fully qualified, or perfectly prepared. It has been developing inside you through every difficult circumstance, gaining strength and clarity with each season of your faithful endurance, reaching the point where it refuses to remain contained within the boundaries of your comfort zone. What you carry in your spirit was planted in secret during your most intimate moments with me, but it was always intended to influence and impact the public sphere. I've been waiting for this moment, because the weight of what you're called to carry can only rest safely on shoulders that have learned to walk in genuine humility, supernatural wisdom, and unshakable faith. You've proven your faithfulness in obscurity, demonstrated your character when no one was watching, and maintained your integrity when it would have been easier to compromise. Now, the mandate I placed within your DNA is pressing against the constraints of time itself, because this assignment isn't only about your personal fulfillment or individual destiny. Your obedience to this calling is directly connected to the liberation of lives that are waiting for your voice to speak hope into their hopelessness, your story to provide a roadmap out of their despair, your surrender to model what trusting God looks like in practical, everyday circumstances. There are people whose next breakthrough is tied to your willingness to step into the assignment that makes your heart race with excitement and terror at the same time. You cannot continue to delay this calling because of fear that whispers you're not qualified enough, uncertainty that questions whether you heard correctly, or the temptation to wait until you have all the details figured out before you take the first step. I'm not asking for your perfection, your complete understanding, or your flawless execution. I'm activating your availability, your willingness to say yes before you see the whole staircase. What you've been calling delay has actually been divine development, strategic preparation that has been equipping you with everything you need for what's coming next. But the season has shifted definitively from preparation to manifestation, from development to deployment, from private cultivation to public activation. The words you've been storing in your heart are no longer meant to be hoarded like precious treasures. They are meant to be spoken with boldness and clarity. The vision I downloaded into your spirit during quiet moments of communion is no longer meant to remain a beautiful secret. It's time to build it with your hands and watch it impact the world around you. You cannot continue to shrink yourself to fit yesterday's comfort zones when today's calling is expanding around you like a divine explosion of possibility and purpose. The weight you feel pressing against your spirit isn't resistance from external forces. It's the pressure of release. Like a seed that has outgrown its shell and must break forth into new life or die in the dark soil of inaction. The acceleration of divine timing and supernatural breakthrough. The restraints that have held back your breakthrough for what felt like endless seasons are not only loosening, they are being completely shattered by the force of divine timing that will not be delayed for another day. What has been held up in the spiritual realm, suspended by my careful hand until the perfect moment, is now being released with supernatural acceleration that will astound everyone who has been watching your journey. This isn't gradual improvement or slow progress that unfolds over years of patient waiting. This is sudden, dramatic, undeniable transformation that happens so quickly it will be obvious to everyone that no human effort could have orchestrated such dramatic change in such a short period of time. When I say the word now over a situation, barriers crumble, obstacles evaporate, and pathways that were completely blocked suddenly become superhighways of blessing and breakthrough. The doors that are about to open won't require you to beg, plead, manipulate, or prove yourself worthy of entry. They will swing wide because you're finally moving in perfect alignment with my authority, carrying the keys that I forged during your seasons of faithful waiting. The opportunities that are about to manifest won't need to be chased down or convinced to notice you. They will seek you out, because the anointing on your life attracts what belongs in your future. Don't be surprised when areas of your life that felt completely dead begin showing signs of supernatural life overnight, as if someone had worked miracles in your garden while you were sleeping. Don't be shocked when people who used to ignore your presence suddenly want to understand what has changed about your countenance, your confidence, your peace that passes understanding. The provision that's about to be released won't come in small increments that leave you wondering if you imagined the improvement. It will arrive in waves that are so substantial, so perfectly timed, so specifically tailored to your exact needs, that you'll know beyond any doubt that heaven has been paying attention to every detail of your situation and has prepared comprehensive solutions that address every area of lack. This acceleration will feel sudden to those observing from the outside, but you'll recognize it as the harvest from seeds of obedience, faithfulness, and trust that you planted during seasons when no one was applauding your efforts. No one was acknowledging your sacrifice. No one was celebrating your commitment to keep believing when circumstances suggested you should give up hope. The momentum that's about to be released in your life cannot be stopped by human opposition, delayed by bureaucratic red tape, or diminished by the jealousy of those who wonder why you're suddenly being blessed when they feel they deserve breakthrough more than you do. What I initiate through divine timing carries my authority, and my authority cannot be challenged, overruled, or canceled by earthly powers. Your complete liberation and authentic identity restoration. The prison of performance, the exhausting cycle of trying to be who others needed you to be instead of who I created you to be, is finally being unlocked with keys forged in the fires of authentic self-discovery. For too long, you have been held captive by the fear that if people saw the real you, with all your quirks, vulnerabilities, dreams, and imperfections, they would reject you and leave you standing alone. So you learn to become a spiritual chameleon, changing colors to match whatever environment you found yourself in, speaking the language that would gain approval, hiding the parts of your personality that seemed too intense, too sensitive, too different from what was considered normal or acceptable in your circles. But I am breaking every chain that has kept you bound to the opinions of finite humans who were never qualified to define your identity or determine your value. The masks you crafted with such skill, the roles you played with such dedication, the person you pretended to be to keep peace and maintain relationships, all of it is being stripped away so the world can finally meet the person I handcrafted in heaven's workshop. This liberation won't just change how you see yourself, it will transform what you attract, how you communicate, the decisions you make, the boundaries you establish, and the energy you carry into every room you enter. You will no longer bend yourself into uncomfortable shapes to fit into environments that were never designed to contain your full glory. You will no longer question your worth based on how others respond to your authentic presence, because you'll be operating from the unshakable foundation of knowing whose you are, rather than trying to figure out who you are through the reactions of people who may not even understand their own identity. The version of you that emerges from this process of divine restoration won't need to prove anything to anyone, because proof will be walking in the room with you. In your peace, your joy, your confidence, your love, that doesn't depend on being loved in return, your strength that doesn't need to dominate others to feel powerful. This authentic version of yourself isn't someone you're becoming, it's who you were before fear taught you to hide, before rejection convinced you that being yourself was dangerous, before the world told you that love was conditional and had to be earned through performance rather than received as a gift. The final victory and eternal testimony. What I am about to do in your life will not only silence every voice that ever questioned whether you were chosen, gifted, or destined for significance. It will create a testimony that echoes through generations, inspiring others to trust my timing, my methods, and my faithfulness, even when nothing makes sense from human perspective. The breakthrough that's coming won't just restore what you've lost. It will multiply what you sacrificed, honor what you surrendered, and vindicate every choice you made to trust my heart when you couldn't see my hand. What emerges from this season won't just be blessing, it will be a demonstration of my character that becomes a landmark for others walking similar paths of faith. Your story will become a map for someone else's escape from despair, a lighthouse for those lost in storms of confusion, a testament to what happens when someone refuses to let go of hope, even when hope seems foolish, naive, or pointless. This isn't just personal victory, it's a prophetic declaration to every person who has been tempted to quit, give up, stop believing, or settle for less than what heaven has promised. Your breakthrough becomes their encouragement. Your restoration becomes their hope. Your testimony becomes their road. The waiting wasn't wasted. The tears weren't meaningless. The silence wasn't abandonment. The delay wasn't denial. Everything was preparation for this moment, when heaven demonstrates that those who trust in the Lord will never be put to shame, that those who wait on the Lord will renew their strength, that those who hope in the Lord will see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. Now is your time. Now is your season. Now is your moment to step into everything I preserved, protected, and prepared for you from the beginning. The veil has been removed. The restraints have been broken. The door has been opened. Walk through it with confidence, knowing that what awaits you on the other side isn't just better than what you lost. It's exactly what your soul has been yearning for since the day you first whispered my name in desperate hope. Your season of hiddenness is over. Your time of revealing has begun. And what I do through you will not only transform your world, it will demonstrate to a watching universe that I am faithful to complete what I begin in the lives of those who love me. The breakthrough is here, the victory is now, the promise is being fulfilled. Walk forward in faith, for your time has come. Amen. Chat Control Sonnet 4.